Hallalium, La Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Bahashem Rachaha Kodash. As it is written, let the elders that rule well be counted worthy of double honors, especially they who labor in the word and doctrine, which are the Presbyterian of Great Millstone, beginning with the elder apostles, the elder bishops, and the elders on down. Peace and salutation to all the Akim of the hopeful elect. May Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Bahashem Racha Kodash, Barakatham. Yahweh is the true name of the Heavenly Father, whom the world ignorantly calls God. Yahweh means here to be, He is, He exists. Okay, that's the true power of heaven and earth. The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, His name is Yahweh. And Yahweh Shai is the true name of His only begotten Son, whom the world ignorantly calls JC. Yahweh Shai means the deliverer, or His Savior, or His salvation. That's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, and the Messiah that came to die for the sins of Israel, beginning with the elect. Alright, and the Roka Kodash is the Spirit Holy. These are the names that He's supposed to call upon and pray to, especially so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. I know they want the heathen, they may look like the heathen, but still it goes back to the patriarchy of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the father's side. Shalom, Sensi Vacharola. My name is Gabag of the Hopeful Election from the Academy of Prophecy in Toronto. Let me tell you the truth, the true truth. Today is August the 2nd, if I'm not mistaken, right? Oh, yeah, August the 2nd. Another considered deliverance of the elect of Israel and the destruction of Babylon the Great, aka America, which America and the state of Israel are going to be destroyed. See the biblical prophecy, okay, because of all the wickedness and all the evil that they've done on the earth. But America is going to remain as a desolate wilderness and it's going to be burning for a long time. It's going to be an example unto other nations and peoples of what not to be. But Israel is going to be rebuilt back up and ultimately restored and held as headquarters of the kingdom of heaven and the Lord Yahweh Shai when He returns back on the earth. Okay, so I want to say that any day now, all hell could break loose as going to time in the scriptures known as Jacob trouble or Desert Yaakov in the Hebrew. It's going to be a time of great distress, great pain and suffering, great havoc on the earth. Okay, so much so that even the Lord Yahweh Shai said that if those days were not shortened, that there should no flesh left to be saved. Okay, so it's going to get so bad to a point where, the Most High is going to intervene. Okay, so therefore, says for the elect's sake, those days are going to be shortened. So that's why you see the days going by faster and faster. The days are getting shortened. Okay, as we are fastly approaching that, that fateful day. Also tells you in the book of Daniel, the 12th chapter, that Michael, the great prince, is going to have to basically come in and sign for their children. Okay, which is going to come to deliver to help and deliver the letter of Israel. Okay, with the Lord Yahweh Shai. Okay. So I'm going to say that the Shabbat this month falls in on Monday at even, Tuesday at even. Keep pursuing to the new moon that came in this month. Okay, so keep it the best of your ability. So going into it, there's an article I came across. Actually, I heard it on the radio, and then I looked it up. And so it came out that basically this Italian ship, that's doing his world tour, and the name is named after a very curious, very interesting name, which is like the Amerigo Vespucci. Which he was an explorer, okay, and ultimately, as we learned from apostles and elders of Great Millstone, that America was named after this explorer, which is the truth. I went ahead and looked it up, and actually came out that Amerigo Vespucci was actually an Italian explorer. Okay, that he found out that that America was actually not Asia, because that's what Christopher Columbus thought when he came over here, that he thought basically like he had reached Asia, or India rather, right? That's why ultimately the so-called Native Americans, they erroneously call them so-called Indians, right? Native Indians, but really, they are not. Okay, but so this place is not America was ultimately named after this explorer. That actually he did that correction and basically corrected that America was not part of Asia, okay, which is not, okay, because ultimately, Edom, as he was doing his world exploration, okay, he was discovering lands, okay, and he would, basically, it was circumnavigating the earth, okay, and he thought basically that the earth, the other part of the earth was also India, right? But anyways, the point of the matter is that, America was named after this explorer by the name of Amerigo Vespucci. Okay, going into it is also scriptural as well, because it tells you that in the book of Isaiah 49 it's like in the book of Psalms 49 verse 11, it says that basically they name the lands after their own names. Or rather, the lands are called after their names. And that's how ultimately so Edom, he has taken over the earth. Okay, he's taking hold of his blessing, like our forefather Isaac gave unto him. That he would have he would have the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth. Okay, but ultimately, this is led to the whole earth being engulfed in wickedness and evil, because ultimately Edom, the so-called white man, he is evil, is wickedness. Okay, he only brings death, destruction, okay, and wickedness. The book of Isaiah, book of John 8 was 44, and it's like John 10 was 10 says like basically like the thief come not but for to steal and kill and to destroy. Okay, that's what Edom has done. It came and stole and killed and destroyed. So ultimately, this is as it is this year 2026 is the 250th year of America's dominance on the earth. Okay, and Trump celebrated it by basically having like a whole parade and everything. But basically, as we've learned that usually empires last a period of 250 years. Okay, so and it's interesting. There's the same shape by the name of Amerigo Vespucci. Is actually making his tour. In the 250th year of America's existence, which basically that will show you that basically this man is at his end. Okay, so let's go ahead and get this. Let's have the scripture here. The book of Isaiah, it's like a Psalms. I'm saying Isaiah, man. Psalms 49 verse 11. And it says, the inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever. Right, that's ultimately how Edom thinks. They think that basically, they're not continue on, being the dominant, race on the earth. Okay, that's why ultimately Trump, came up with this in his mantra, make America great again. The MAGA movement. Okay, now his thing was basically, saying that basically America is going to experience, even greater success, and it's going to even get better, right? It's going to continue to get better and better, and never go down. That's ultimately how these Edomites think, man. They think that they're going to continue on, being in power forever. But that's, they are horribly mistaken, right? It says the inward thought is that the house shall continue forever, right? And their dwelling place to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. And it's actually, made me curious. On the other hand, I looked up the first city that was named. It was actually named after Enoch, right? Which was the son of Cain. Go ahead and get that. The book of Genesis 4, verse 17, and it says, and Cain, which Cain, Cain was the brother of Abel, which he murdered. He was the first murderer, okay, by murdering his brother Abel. That's how this man, is is Esau, that came back in the basically this was Esau before it was in the reincarnation, right? It says, and Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bare Enoch, and he builded a city, right, and called the name of the city after the name of his son Enoch. So therefore, this man, he's known for basically taking over lands and building cities on the earth and naming them after himself. So this is factual, man. Also, I went ahead and actually looked it up on the Google, right, on the chat. So I went ahead and looked it up. Right? It says, so basically typing, was America named after Amerigo Vespucci? And it says yes. It says yes, America was named after Amerigo Vespucci. He was a Florentine explorer and navigator who realized the lands Christopher Columbus sailed to were not the eastern outskirts of Asia, right, like I said, but an entirely separate landmass. In his widely circulated letters, he coined the phrase Mundus Novus, Latin for New World, you see. Which America is the New World. America is, it's also known as, the fourth part, the ends, the ends of the earth, right? That's why Allah says, he will be with us even unto the end of the earth, which is, America is, the last landmass that was really, so-called discovered, which really wasn't discovered. You already had the tribes here that came here already. Even before that, King Solomon used to sail here to collect gold, okay, with his ships. It tells you in the book of Kings, right? He would, he had his merchants, okay, and they come here to gather gold, because America is a very rich and rich landmass, right? So there's more to it here. It says you go down to says the cartographer is how the naming happened. The cartographer in 1507 Germany, cartographer Martin Waldschmuller, I would say the name, created a revolutionary world map. The inspiration, Waldschmuller read Vespucci's published travelogues and erroneously credited him with discovering the continent. Which says it's an error, because ultimately, you already had people that were living here. It says the Latin shift. He translated Amerigo into the Latin masculine form Americas, and then modified to its feminine form America to match the naming conventions of Europa and Asia. Okay, that's there. And then I went ahead also and basically asked Google another question. It said lands and cities named after Caucasian men, right? It says let me see. Yeah, so actually, went ahead and answer this question, right? Let me get this. It says what race of people have the most lands and cities named after them? And guess what it says? Look, it says right here. It says white/European people have the most lands, countries, and cities named after them globally due to centuries of exploration, colonization, and global political dominance. You see, so like this is back in the scriptures. Okay. Ultimately, when you go into it, right? So I went ahead and actually looked up some of these names here, right? So it says when looking at the sheer landmass of a number of major global cities, specific European groups hold the highest numbers, right? To me, like I said, Esau Edom, is living all his blessing, the blessing that our forefather Isaac gave unto him, and that he would have the finance of the earth, right? It says the Americas. Nearly 30% of the world's landmass is named after a single Italian man, Amerigo Vespucci, right? His name was, which this what the Italians go back to the so-called to the Romans, which were Idumeans, okay, for the most part. His name was used to designate North America, Central America, and South America. Other countries and cities, Christopher Columbus, an Italian explorer, right, another Roman, Idumate. This has another entire country named after him, Colombia, along with major cities like Columbus, Ohio, right? So then when you actually I went ahead and I said this other question. Actually, I looked up cities and lands that are named after Caucasian men. And you have like you see, of course, America, Colombia after Columbus. The Philippines was named after Philip II of Spain. Mauritius named after Maurice of Nassau, Prince of Orange, right? There's Bolivia, named after the Venezuelan military and political leader Simon Bolivar, right? Rhodesia was named after British businessman and political Cecil Rhodes, which Rhodesia, I believe, that was there's a country in Africa. I think it's Zimbabwe. Before it's called, I'm not sure, I think it's Zimbabwe. Before he had that, it was called Rhodesia, right? And you have Georgia, which is a state of America, was named after King George II of Great Britain, right? In Louisiana, it was named after King Louis of France. Tasmania, named after Dutch explorer Abel Tasman. Alexandria, right? Named after ancient Macedonian ruler Alexander the Great. Washington, D.C., named after George Washington, right? Vancouver, named after British naval officer George Vancouver. Sydney, named in honor of Thomas Townshend and 1st Viscount Sydney. Melbourne, named after British Prime Minister William Lamb, 2nd Viscount Melbourne. St. Petersburg, and the list goes on and on and on, right? So, that's the point, right? The point is that, Edom, the so-called white man, he is the one that's known for taking over lands and naming them after himself, okay, or his people, right? So ultimately, this also goes into the fact that, as they took over the world, they increased, as they increased in numbers. Basically, it tells you that they increase in the earth increased in wickedness, which that was also that's in the Apocrypha. But ultimately, the point of the matter is that Esau Edom, is going to be brought to an end. Okay, things that it's going to continue on to reign forever, right? But this is not the case. Let's get the book of Apocrypha and get that. book of Maccabees, right? The second chapter, first chapter rather. Psalm verse 1 says, so this is when Israel came into power, right? I should get that. Let me get the first one that the foundation of the earth, right? Yeah, so this book of Genesis 27 verse verse 39. So going to the blessing of Esau, right? Because ultimately what happened was that Jacob, his twin brother, came and supplanted him because what? Esau ultimately, he has sold his birthright. He was a sellout. He sold his birthright for a bowl of lentils, okay, a bowl of soup. You see, so therefore, when you go into it, basically, Jacob came in and supplanted his brother, okay, and took his blessing. It took the blessing of the firstborn, the firstborn, okay. Yes, going to point as it's like Genesis 27 verse 38. It says, and Esau said unto his father, hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Right? And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, behold, thy dwelling shall be the finest of the earth. Right? So that's why ultimately Esau, he has, he is at this point right now, is living out his blessing, but it's going to come to an abrupt end, right? It says that the dwelling shall be the finest of the earth. Also, the fact that also so he basically takes up the most the best parts of the earth. Okay, when you go to like all these the rich areas, the resorts. Okay, the good neighborhoods. Okay, the most fruitful lands. Esau Edom takes them. Esau Edom dwells there, and then he pushes the natives into into obscurity. See, that's what happened over here in America. Okay, when you go to like all these in like places like in Europe, they're very lush and beautiful. Okay, even in Africa. Okay, even in Australia, Esau Edom, he has the best when it comes to the lands. Ultimately, the land of Israel, the Idumeans are over there too. But that land has been cursed because, it's supposed to be the holy land, but you have the wicked people inhabiting it right now. Right? It says, the dwelling place shall be, the dwelling shall be the finest of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by the sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. Right? So the sword, and that's how Edom was able to conquer the earth. When you go to, I was about to get the book of the first Maccabees, that's how ultimately Alexander the Macedonian was able to conquer the earth, which all the other kingdoms they did the same thing too, but the Macedonians they took it to another level, and the speed and the speed and the ferocity by which he was able to take it over, that's biblical, right? Says, and Isaac his father says, and by the sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother Jacob, right? And it shall come to pass that when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. And that happened after really, going back into like when Israel fell, okay? When it fell as a nation, Esau Edom, was able to basically, break off the yoke of slavery. Because when in times of King David and King Solomon, okay, they had the Edomites, in slavery, in bondage, right? So going back to the book of First Maccabees, okay, going to like how Esau Edom taken over the earth. Verse 1 says, First Maccabees 1 verse 1 says, and it happened after that Alexander the son of Philip, the Macedonians who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius the king of Persia and the Medes, and he reigned in his stead the first over Greece, right? And made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth. Once again, the sword, by says It says, "But the sword shall not live." That's how Esau Edom was able to take over the earth, right? And went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, in so much that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted, and his heart was lifted up, right? And he gathered a mighty strong host of rule, and he gathered a mighty strong host of ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. Right? Chapter verse 7. So it says, so Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, and his servants bare rule every one his place. It's like it. And after his death they all put crowns upon themselves, so did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. You see, so ultimately that's how Esau Edom, through his reign, he has caused wickedness to flourish in the earth. So now here it is. We have now the same ship, okay, the Amerigo Vespucci, during his world tour, okay, which this was named, like I say, it's named after that Italian explorer, right? So it says Amerigo Vespucci World Tour North America Campaign 2026. The journey of Italian Navy's training ship Amerigo Vespucci continues in Canada, in Quebec City and Montreal. This is over here in Canada, right? It says the journey of the Amerigo Vespucci World Tour North America Campaign 2026 continues in Canada. The Italian Navy's training ship has just arrived in the province of Quebec. It will stay in Quebec City till July 27th and Montreal from July 29th to August the 3rd, so till tomorrow. And continuing to showcase to the world the beauty, right, identity, cultural exchange, and culture of Italy and the Italian people, right? So once again, Esau Edom, he's living out his blessing, right? But guess what? The fact of the matter is that the Most High is about to cut them short. Go and get that. Yeah, the book of Isaiah 14 verse 17, right? Isaiah 14 verse 17 and reads, "That made the world as a wilderness," and that's ultimately Esau Edom through his conquest and his conquering of the earth. Okay, because he transgressed the laws of the Heavenly Father. Okay, did that which was not good. Ultimately the earth has been turned into into a wilderness. Okay, basically it turned paradise into hell. Okay, that's why I say the animals are suffering. Okay, I was watching this video that one of the brothers put in the chat. You have these monkeys in the labs being experimented on. Okay, and the suffering, man. They're suffering. The experimenting on them with the chips, the brain chips. Okay, so that's why I see ultimately even the seasons are not the same anymore. Okay, it's like the summer. It was very it was just everything's out of whack. Okay, the peace of that was there before. Okay, the people they should be there anyways. It's not there anymore. Okay, the animals are suffering. Okay, without the pollution. Okay, whether it be in the seas, in the air, on the earth, under the earth, right, everywhere and anywhere. The earth is suffering under the reign of this so-called white man. You see, it says that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof. Okay, that opened not these houses of the prisoners. That's how Esau Edom does. He be having especially Jake. Giving them multiple lifetime sentences, right? It says all the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, everyone in his own house. But thou art cast out of the grave like an abominable branch. So when you go into the book of Obadiah, 18th chapter, it's like Obadiah, 18th verse, it talks about basically how Esau Edom is going to be wiped out. Okay, after a period of serving slavery for 1,000 years. Okay, same as the other nations. Tell the nations that they're going to receive their lands. They're going to be able to actually to grow their nations. But Israel is going to be cast out. It's going to be rooted out. It's going to be exterminated. Okay, to put it bluntly, it says, "But thou art cast out of the grave like an abominable branch, and as the remnant of those that are slain, thrust through the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet." Right? Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed their land. You see, and slain thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Okay, so Edom is going to be ultimately, rooted out of the earth. Okay, because it's wicked. Prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquities of their fathers. Right, which ultimately that's what we're doing. When you go in the house and Bibles, we're telling you Edomites that your time is up. That basically you're gonna get judged for what your forefathers have done, for what your parents and your foreparents have done on the earth. Okay, the slavery they put the so-called blacks under. Okay, they did the things they did to the so-called Native Americans. Okay, they did the things they continue to do to the so-called Latinos, Mexicans. Okay, the lion tribes. Okay, the Most High is gonna come is gonna come to destroy you for all the wickedness that you've done on the earth. Okay, for taking over all these land masses. Okay, and creating and turning paradise into hell. See, it says, prepare slaughter for his children, for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land, nor fill the face with this, nor fill the face of the world with cities. You see, so that's ultimately how it's is going down. Okay, he thought that's gonna continue on forever, and the Most is gonna bring it to an end. It's gonna bring it to a stop. Okay, so that way you don't have to have any more cities named after you, any more countries, continents named after the Edomites, man. All that's gonna be done away with. That's the truth, man. You see. Verse 22 says, "For I will rise up against them," says the Lord Yahweh of hosts, "and cut off from Babylon," right? Which Babylon is America, modern America. The name, you see, which once again, the Amerigo Vespucci, that goes back to the Italian explorer. It says, and cut off from them, and cut off from Babylon the name, the remnant, and the son and the nephew, said Lord Yahweh. That's why. Why is that? That's because the men, the ones that bring forth nations. You see, going back to like the man, Cain, he did with his wife, right? And she bare Enoch, and then and that brought forth the wicked line, which ultimately was brought back again through Esau. You see, so ultimately, so your time of reign is about to be cut short. It's truth, man. So that we're going to do is brate Hawashai. I say, Kama Sharala, wa abababal, Shalom Akim, Shalom.